Before I start this video, I just wanted to say justice for George Floyd. Black Lives Matter. We need to stay together. Keep protesting. We need to keep making noise. I will leave some websites in the description if you want to donate. I've already donated. Anyways, today we're going to be watching a Rebound Central video. And it is called NBA Rules You Didn't Know Exist. I've never seen this video. It's one of his most popular videos ever. So I figured it would be worth checking out. So yeah. Let's get this video started.
Now, with the NBA constantly evolving each year, there's actually plenty of rules you didn't even know exist. Now, obviously shattering the backboard isn't the most common scenario in the NBA, but there's actually a rule in play that results in a foul and could even result in a fine. This rule was changed to what it is today back in 1993 when rookie at the time Shaquille O'Neal with the Magic had his way with many rims and backboards during the course of the season. And it eventually led up to the NBA changing their ruling around, which tried to prevent people from doing monstrous dunks that could delay the game. Before Shaq, there was only one name who was known to bring the rim down ever, and that was Daryl Dawkins. But nobody did it as often as Shaquille O'Neal. There were in fact a couple of instances where Shaq not only shattered the backboard, but he broke the whole support system holding the entire rim in place. Another time that Shaq broke the NBA's equipment was during a putback dunk that he made on a teammate's missed shot where he slammed the ball back with two hands, and it completely broke the hydraulic system of the hoop, which basically put players and fans in danger when it started to collapse. Another account of Shaq shattering the backboard was just a few weeks after this putback dunk took place, when in a game against the Nets, he slammed the ball so hard he nearly took his own head off with the shot clock when everything that was a part of the rim and backboard came crashing down. The chairman of the NBA competition committee released a statement afterwards saying, "We had a new thing this year with backboards both coming down and being broken. We're gonna make sure that all of the equipment is up to par. Whether it was Shaquille O'Neal or someone else, with the size of these guys, it was just a matter of time. He just happened to be a little bigger and stronger than most." Now, another rule that barely anybody knows much about is something that nearly happened only one time before, and that was nearly 60 years ago. This rule is called the disaster draft, and it was put into place after a tragic event almost happened in 1960. And it went a little bit like this, where a full Lakers team was on a plane during a severe snowstorm, in which a malfunction obviously happened, and thankfully the pilot was actually able to safely crash land in a cornfield, which somehow left nobody hurt. But the rule in this situation was put in because if some or all of the members were hurt and could never play again, the Lakers wouldn't even have a team to play. This rule works somewhat like a fantasy draft, but not 100% the same way. Each team in the league gets an option to lock down 5 players they wanted to keep no matter what, and the rest of their roster would be thrown into a draft, where the team who lost their players would be able to draft whoever they'd like that wasn't locked down as a top 5 on each team. For example, if some players on a team this year were involved in some sort of accident leaving them without a team, the Lakers among all the other teams would lock down their top 5 guys. So if they chose LeBron James, Anthony Davis, Kyle Kuzma, Danny Green, and Dwight Howard, then the remaining players on the team are eligible to get drafted by the team that suffered the accident. And other than those top 5 guys on each team, anybody could possibly switch teams if chosen. Now, yet another ridiculous rule that hasn't necessarily had an instance where it happened before is the off-the-bounce shot. Although it somehow never happened on accident, the NBA has a rule in the books that states if a player is to shoot a shot that ended up bouncing in the hoop, it's considered legal, as long as the ball bounces before the shot clock expires. However, if the ball is shot and the buzzer goes off, and then the ball bounces and goes in, it's considered a dead ball. It'd be rare for this to ever happen, but it is a real rule, and if someone did manage to pull this off, it might be one of the greatest shots of all time as long as they get it off before the clock expires. Now, this next rule is something that's only happened on rare occasions, but by notable players at that. This rule is known pretty widely around the league, but the reason it doesn't get much attention is because it's rarely actually called on the players. Most guys get the ball and set up within seconds and shoot their free throws, but there have been some players in the history of the game who are actually notorious for taking all 10 seconds or more to shoot, which was in fact called sometimes if a player took way too long. Karl Malone became known as the player who took the longest time to set up and shoot a free throw, and it even got so bad that opposing team crowds would begin chanting him counting down like 10, 9, 8 to not only throw him off, but show the refs he's taking forever. Dwight Howard is another recent player in the league who struggled with getting his free throws up quickly, but as we all know, him taking long clearly never really helped Howard's shot, as he struggled from the line pretty much his entire career. But he does like to change it with the Lakers, as it's become a main focus of his to improve for the sake of the team. And lastly but not least, the most recent occurrence of this violation ever being called was in 2016 when the MVP Giannis Antetokounmpo took so long to get his free throw up, it got called and he lost the shot. But since then, he sped up his free throw, and nobody in the league has been called for this violation ever since. Now, over the last decade, the NBA has done many things over the years to make sure player safety is at the top of every team's priority list. The NBA recently made a rule allowing the players to get more rest than normal, which also cuts down the amount of practices a team could run during the year. CNN posted recently saying that the NBA is now making it mandatory that makes players rest 18 days over the course of the season to make sure that they're not overworked. Over the last few years, there's been a lot of growing concern of players even taking rest during games, which has left many fans outraged. This stems back to 2012 when Greg Popovich would rest some of his key Spurs players during games to ensure that they had proper rest heading into the playoffs where games actually mattered the most. And at the time, they were fined $250,000 for resting them. But in recent years, even players like LeBron James, Kawhi Leonard, and more have sat games out for load management, and they've received plenty of criticism for it, especially when their teams show up to arenas where fans are expecting them to play, only to be disappointed by them resting for little to no explanation. But because of this, the NBA's rule for making players have mandatory rest in fact caught some fire recently, with Adam Silver attempting to crack down on teams who rest their star players during highly anticipated televised games, which many people are wondering about, considering it contradicts his recent rest rules. It was in fact made public recently that Adam Silver could fine teams $100,000 for resting star players during televised games, and Silver even issued a statement saying, "It ultimately is my hope that the rules go in the drawer and that teams step up here and see that there's a larger obligation to our fans, to the basketball community." Now, a few years back, the NBA really cracked down on dress code of players compared to years beforehand, where it's pretty much a free-for-all. We've seen them crack down on both what players could wear in-game, like banning ninja-style headbands, Supreme sleeves, tinted glasses, black masks, do-rags, and even went as far as saying players couldn't wear their headbands with the logo upside down. But off the court, things have been pretty ridiculous with players showcasing their unique style. Obviously, we've seen players like Russell Westbrook, James Harden, and more wear ridiculous outfits that have gone viral. But an interesting rule surrounding the dress code that was revised in 2005 is no Timberland boots. These boots aren't allowed to be worn in front of fans or during press conferences, and the ex-NBA commissioner David Stern at the time actually gave someone an explanation during a statement that said, there are different uniforms for different occasions. There's the uniform you wear on the court, there's the uniform you wear when you're on business, there's the uniform you might wear on your casual downtime with your friends, and there's the uniform you might wear when you go back home. We're just changing the definition of the uniform that you wear when you're on NBA business. Now, one interesting rule that many may have never noticed is that the road team of each NBA game actually has a crucial decision to make before they take the court, and that's which hoop they'd like to start at, and which they'd like to finish the game at. This could play a huge role in strategy, since it comes into play when coaches decide which way they want to attack first. Will coaches rather have their players go towards the bench, so that players can hear them at the start of the game, or rather have players near them for late game instructions? It seems like most coaches choose to have players go towards the opposing bench at the start of the game in order to tell them information easier during crunch time. The road team choosing which basket they want to start on has been a rule for a long time, but it usually happens before any television coverage, so if you aren't at a game, you most likely won't notice. And although this seems slight, a lot of strategy is actually involved. Now, obviously, when it comes to the NBA, fights or punches aren't allowed whatsoever, as it's always an immediate ejection and fines, with potential suspensions, if anything like that in fact unfolds. But with that, the no punching rule actually goes further than just that. You actually aren't even allowed to punch the basketball either. When players are frustrated, they often slam the ball down or pick it back up and smack it with an open fist, which is not recommended, but obviously it's legal. But if at any point a player punches the ball with a closed fist, it's automatically a turnover, whether the player was already ruled dead or not. One of the main concerns for punching the basketball is that the ball is unpredictable and could end up hitting someone causing harm, and with almost every rule in the NBA making sure to keep the players, staff, and of course the fans safe, punching the ball has been ruled out as well. The league takes out of control behavior very seriously, and just like punching the ball, throwing the ball into the crowd isn't acceptable either, since as fans aren't prepared to bring the game like the players are. We've seen many circumstances of a player whipping the ball into the stands and receive a fine of $25,000 because of it. We've seen it recently with Patrick Beverley during the first game of the season with LA. Of course, players like Kyrie Irving, DeMar DeRozan, Terrence Ross, and even Andre Iguodala received fines for doing the exact same thing, throwing the ball in the crowd. Now, obviously, screens are basic fundamentals in basketball that most plays have involved in them, and they'll remain important to getting players open both on and off the ball. But over the last couple of years, the NBA introduced a rule making it so that if the player setting the screen is standing out of bounds, or the player getting the screen runs out of bounds, then it's an automatic turnover. One of the most recent examples of this was when Hasheem Thabeet and Kevin Durant were both on the Thunder, and Thabeet set a screen for Durant on the baseline. It ended up being called out of bounds due to Thabeet's foot being slightly over the line. Now, last but not least, something that's been long debated and recently considered is adding a brand new dimension to NBA courts, a brand new 4-point line. Believe it or not, many teams including the Hawks and 76ers have already implemented a 4-point line in their team facilities, hoping they can get guys ready for when the NBA finally makes the decision to make a 4-point line they've been talking about for years.
I'm not gonna lie, that'd be kind of litty.
Last year's season,
I don't know if I want that,
Trae Young hit a super deep
but I don't know if I
of following
don't
through
want
the shot.
that.
Instead, made sure lounging the Lakers
That might
bench
be
knew
kinda
exactly where he shot from, pointing right at the purple L on the court,
That might
which was
be-
more than
yeah,
30
that might be kind of
Trae
lit.
even recently talked about this hinting at a 4-point line, and he told them if there was one, he'd be a threat from deep. After being asked about his delivery against the Lakers as well as his thoughts on the 4-point line, Trae Young said, I would always try to extend my range farther and farther because I wasn't getting much taller. The farther I shoot, people weren't expecting that. Now the NBA's discussed the idea over recent years mainly because of players like Stephen Curry shooting ridiculously deep threes that's honestly kind of changed the way that the game's played, and more teams than ever are relying heavily on 3-point shooting like the Houston Rockets. Players like Trae Young, Damian Lillard, and more have not shied away whatsoever from shooting so far back because they're confident in still shooting a high percentage further back than the 3-point line. It makes complete sense that some sort of 4-point line should be put in as players already shoot from that deep anyways, and it would also affect the players who don't shoot that far from the hoop as well. If there's players alongside them that could. For example, if Giannis Antetokounmpo, one of the best finishers and dunkers in the game, has a 4-point specialist alongside him, it opens the floor for him to finish at the hoop that much easier if a player is a threat from deep. Many players and legends of the past have already weighed in on this topic of 4-point line being introduced into the game. Legendary player and Warriors head coach Steve Kerr even said, "Please no, that sounds insane." Reggie Miller, a prolific long-range shooter during his playing days, even told in an interview that the 4-point shot would make the game a laughingstock. But Portland's own Damian Lillard defended the scenario. He told Dan Patrick he would absolutely favor a 4-point line because the current 3-pointer isn't enough of a challenge for this new generation of players. And he said, "We've got so many guys shooting it so easy." And last but not least, the legendary Larry Bird was also in favor of the idea, since he likes the way that the threes opened up the game and has given more chances to smaller players to be helpless down low. We talked about this and said maybe 5 or 10 years down the road, force of what everybody will be shooting. The game evolves. Hey, you
know what I mean? Like let's test run it for a month or something. See what it's. But it could maybe be lit. I don't know. Well, you guys can let me know what you think about that in the comments. Should they do a 4-point line or should they not do a 4-point line? I think it would be kind of lit. Anyways, that's going to do it. I'll leave a link to Rebound Central's channel in the description. Go check them out. Justice for George Floyd. Rest in peace, George Floyd. Go check out my video on my other channel. And yeah, that's going to do it. I'm out of here, man. Peace.
Hey, back it out west, slang it out west. Go metallic knife, I can shake it out west.
Okay, cool. I think I can do that. All right, let's do it.
Hey, back it out west, slang it out west. Go metallic knife, I can shake it out
I'm born for TikTok.
Sit the down.
I was born for this TikTok.